Rain hammered against the hangar roof as Jack Foster tightened the last bolt on the damaged jet engine. His calloused hands worked with practiced precision despite the howling winds outside. The mysterious woman who had appeared in his small municipal airport during the worst storm of the year watched silently, her designer clothes soaked through. "I don't need payment," he said, wiping grease from his fingers. "Just get home safe to your family." Little did Jack know, Eliza Parker had no family to return to, and her $4.2 billion empire couldn't buy what his gentle hands had just given her for free. One man who lost everything but kept his dignity. One woman who owned everything but couldn't find genuine connection. Watch until the end to discover how a chance meeting during a raging storm proved that true worth isn't measured in dollars and cents, but in the courage to love again after heartbreak. The first light of dawn filtered through the thin curtains of Jack Foster's modest two-bedroom home on the outskirts of Boulder, Colorado. At 38, Jack had perfected the art of waking before his alarm. He swung his legs over the edge of the bed, his feet finding the cool wooden floor. The empty space beside him remained undisturbed, sheets still pulled tight on that side, a habit he couldn't break after 3 years. In the kitchen, Jack poured coffee into a chipped mug, a gift from his daughter Lily decorated with wobbly painted stars. He leaned against the counter, savoring the quiet moments before the day began in earnest. Through the window, the Rocky Mountains stood sentinel in the distance, their peaks catching the first blush of sunlight. Jack checked the weather forecast on his phone, frowning at the storm system predicted to hit later that day. He moved quietly down the hallway, pausing at his daughter's door. 8-year-old Lily slept peacefully, her wild curls spread across the pillow like a halo. Jack gently smoothed her hair, whispering, "Rise and shine, little pilot." Lily stirred, blinking sleepily before her face brightened with a smile that never failed to heal something in Jack's chest. Their morning routine unfolded with practiced efficiency. Jack packed Lily's lunch while she dressed peanut butter sandwich cut diagonally the way she preferred. Apple slices arranged in a pattern, and a small note tucked beside the napkin. Today's message read, "Fly high today, Lilipad. Love, Dad." These small rituals anchored them both. Throughout their modest home, touches of their shared life were evident everywhere. Model airplanes hung from Lily's ceiling. The coffee table Jack had built from reclaimed wood bore the scratches and watermarks of daily use. Lily's artwork plastered the refrigerator crayon drawings of planes, clouds, and stick figures labeled Dad and Me. Noticeably absent was a mother figure in these illustrations, though neither of them mentioned it. "Dad, is it true that birds know when storms are coming?" Lily asked, her mouth full of cereal. Jack nodded, pouring more milk into her bowl. "They can sense changes in air pressure that we can't feel. Smart creatures, birds. Like you with planes." Lily's eyes were wide, with the absolute faith that only children possess. "Not quite that smart," Jack chuckled, though his colleagues at the municipal airport would disagree. His ability to diagnose mechanical issues bordered on intuitive, earning him a reputation that spread throughout Colorado's aviation community. As head mechanic at the small municipal airport outside Boulder, Jack's days were filled with the familiar smell of engine oil and the satisfying challenge of keeping aircraft safe and operational. The salary wasn't comparable to his former position as an aviation engineer for a major airline, but it allowed him flexible hours to be there when Lily needed him. After Emma's death from cancer 3 years ago, nothing had seemed more important. Jack remembered the day he'd resigned from his corporate job, the puzzled expressions of his supervisors when he declined their offers of extended leave. "My daughter needs me more than this company does," he'd explained simply. The decision had meant downsizing their home, tightening their budget, and starting over in many ways, but Jack never regretted choosing presence over prosperity. To supplement their income, Jack restored classic cars in the small garage behind their house. On weekends, Lily would sit on an overturned bucket, handing him tools and absorbing his explanations of engines and mechanics with surprising comprehension. "We fix things in this family," Jack often told her. "If something's broken, and you can fix it, you should." This philosophy extended beyond machines. When Lily came home crying because a classmate had been excluded from a birthday party, Jack helped her create special invitations for a small gathering at their home instead. When their elderly neighbor's porch steps began to rot, Jack spent a Saturday replacing them, waving away offers of payment. "Good neighbors look out for each other," he'd told Lily, who had helped by holding nails and painting the new railings. Yet, for all his skill at repairing things, Jack couldn't seem to fix the hollow space in his own life. His wedding ring remained on his finger, a physical reminder of the promises he'd made and intended to keep, even after Emma was gone. Friends had gently suggested it might be time to consider dating again, but Jack always deflected these conversations. How could he explain that it wasn't just about loyalty to Emma's memory, but about protecting himself and Lily from further loss? When are we getting a new mommy? Lily had asked several months ago, catching Jack off guard as they drove home from school. What makes you ask that? He'd responded carefully. Zoe in my class got a new daddy. And Madison has 2 mommies now. Her innocent logic made the question sound so simple. Jack had gripped the steering wheel tighter. Sometimes families change, but ours is perfect just as we are. Don't you think? Lily had nodded, easily distracted by a hot air balloon in the distance, but the question lingered in Jack's mind long after. Was he denying his daughter something essential by remaining alone? Was his reluctance to open his heart again ultimately selfish? These thoughts followed him to work that morning as dark clouds gathered on the horizon. The airport manager stopped by Jack's hangar, concern etched on his weathered face. Storms moving in faster than they predicted. Might want to send your team home early. Jack nodded, glancing at the skies. I'll finish securing everything. You head out too. By mid-afternoon, the airport had emptied of all but essential personnel. Jack worked methodically, checking tie-downs on the small aircraft, securing loose equipment, and battening down the hangars against the coming winds. Rain began to pelt the metal roof as he finished, the distant rumble of thunder punctuating his work. The radio crackled to life as Jack was preparing to leave. Boulder Municipal, this is Private Jet November 735 Echo Papa, requesting emergency landing clearance. We're experiencing engine trouble and need immediate assistance. Jack grabbed the radio. This is Boulder Municipal. Runway 2 is clear for emergency landing. Winds currently at 30 knots from the southwest, gusting to 45. What's your ETA? Approximately 7 minutes. We've lost power in one engine, and the second is showing unusual readings. Understood. Emergency services will be standing by. Jack hung up the radio and immediately activated the emergency protocols, his mind shifting into the focused calm that had served him well through countless mechanical crises. As he prepared the runway lights, rainwater soaked through his jacket, but he barely noticed. Someone was in trouble, and he could help. Everything else, the rain, the cold, his own discomfort, became secondary. The sleek Gulfstream private jet emerged from the stormy skies like a wounded bird, its approach steeper than normal, one engine visibly struggling. Jack watched with professional assessment as the aircraft touched down hard, but safely, taxiing toward the main hangar before coming to a stop. Even through the downpour, Jack could tell this was no ordinary private plane. This was wealth on wings. The kind of aircraft whose owners measured their fortunes in billions, not millions. Jack grabbed his toolkit and ran toward the jet as the cabin door opened and the stairs extended. A woman emerged first, tall, elegant, and completely out of place in the rural airport during a raging storm. Even with rain plastering her clothes to her body, and her dark hair falling in wet strands around her face, she carried herself with unmistakable authority. Their eyes met briefly across the tarmac, and something passed between them, a flicker of recognition that neither could explain. Little did Jack know that this stormy encounter would change both their lives forever. Eliza Parker stood on the unfamiliar tarmac, rain soaking through her silk blouse and tailored pants. At 35, she had grown accustomed to controlling every aspect of her environment, the temperature in her office, the timing of her meetings, the precise wording of press releases about her company. But nature had other plans today, and for once, Eliza Parker, CEO of Horizon Innovations and the reclusive genius behind revolutionary sustainable energy technology, found herself at the mercy of circumstances beyond her control. The pilot emerged behind her, his face tight with professional concern. Miss Parker, we need to get you inside. I've arranged for a car to take you to Denver. We can have another jet ready within hours. Eliza's gaze remained fixed on the man approaching them through the downpour. Unlike her security team with their earpieces and perpetual vigilance, this stranger moved with the easy confidence of someone completely in his element. His worn jeans and work shirt were rapidly becoming as soaked as her designer outfit, yet he seemed unfazed by the weather. I'd like to stay, she said, surprising herself. I want to understand what happened to the jet. The pilot's protest died on his lips as Jack reached them. Up close, Eliza noticed the fine lines around his eyes, laugh lines that spoke of a life lived authentically. His hands, when he extended one in greeting, were calloused and strong, nails trimmed short with traces of engine grease that no amount of scrubbing could completely remove. Jack Foster, head mechanic, he introduced himself, his voice clear and steady even through the howling wind. Let's get you folks inside before you drown standing up. Under the bright lights of the hangar, Eliza watched as Jack circled the jet, his experienced eyes immediately identifying areas of concern. The security team and pilot huddled in a corner, making alternate arrangements, while Eliza found herself drawn to the quiet competence of the mechanic. What's the verdict? She asked, joining him as he inspected an access panel, Jack glanced up, seeming mildly surprised that she was interested. Primary engine suffered electrical failure, likely from a lightning strike. Secondary engine was compensating, but showing signs of stress. You're lucky your pilot made the decision to land when he did. How long will repairs take? Jack straightened, wiping rain from his face. Parts we need aren't stocked here. Major roads are already flooding from the storm. Realistically? Tomorrow at the earliest. Eliza nodded. Processing this information with the same analytical approach she applied to business challenges. I should introduce myself. I'm Miss Parker. We've secured rooms at the Ritz in Denver, her chief of security interrupted, approaching with purposeful strides. Helicopter transfer isn't possible in this weather, but we have a convoy of SUVs ready. Something in Eliza rebelled at the thought of another sterile hotel room, another evening surrounded by people paid to agree with her. On impulse, she said, "Give me a moment, Richard." When her security team retreated to a respectful distance, Eliza turned back to Jack. "I'm Liz," she said, deliberately using the nickname few people ever used. "And I'd like to stay while you work on the plane, if that's all right. I'm curious about the repair process." Jack studied her for a moment, clearly trying to reconcile her expensive clothes with her request. "It's going to be a long, boring evening of diagnostic tests and mechanical work. Not exactly entertainment. I find competence entertaining," she replied with a small smile. "Besides, I could use a break from." She gestured vaguely toward her hovering entourage. Understanding flickered in Jack's eyes. "Your team seems concerned about leaving you behind." "They're paid to be concerned." The words came out more sharply than Eliza intended. She softened her tone. "I'll handle it." To Jack's evident surprise, she did. With a few quiet but firm instructions, Eliza dispatched her security team and pilot to Denver, assuring them she would be fine at the small airport until morning. Only when the black SUVs had disappeared into the rainy darkness did she allow her shoulders to relax slightly. The small waiting area offered little comfort: a couple of vinyl chairs, vending machines with questionable snacks, and a coffee maker that had seen better days. Jack emerged from examining the jet, wiping his hands on a shop towel. "I can give you a ride to a hotel if you'd prefer," he offered, noticing her surveying the sparse accommodations. Eliza shook her head. "This is fine. Actually, it's refreshing." Jack raised an eyebrow but didn't comment further. Instead, he made fresh coffee, the rich aroma gradually replacing the institutional smell of the waiting area. When he handed her a steaming mug, airport logo, faded from countless washings, their fingers brushed briefly. Eliza noticed how he instinctively steadied the mug to prevent spills, a small gesture of consideration that struck her more deeply than she expected. "So, you fix planes," she said, searching for normal conversation. "Among other things." Jack unwrapped a sandwich from brown paper, broke it in half, and offered her a portion. When she hesitated, he added, "My daughter made it. She insists on extra peanut butter." The mention of his daughter shifted something in the air between them. "How old is she?" Eliza asked, accepting the sandwich half. 8 going on 30, Jack smiled, the love evident in his voice. He pulled out his wallet, showing her a school photo of a small girl with wild curls and a gap-toothed smile. "Lily, smartest kid in Colorado, if you ask me." Eliza studied the photo, feeling an unexpected pang. "She has your eyes." Her mother's smile, though, Jack said quietly, and Eliza caught the shadow that passed over his face. The conversation drifted to safer topics: the Rocky Mountain weather patterns, the vintage aircraft Jack had restored over the years, books they had both read. Eliza carefully steered away from any mention of her own work or background, finding surprising relief in being just Liz for an evening, not the ghost CEO whose rare public appearances made financial news headlines. As Jack worked on the jet, Eliza observed his methodical approach, the way he spoke softly to the engine as if it could hear him, the quiet satisfaction in his expression when he identified a problem. She found herself relaxing in a way she rarely did around others, the pretenses and performances of her normal life temporarily suspended in this rain-lashed airport at the edge of the mountains. The peace was interrupted by Jack's phone ringing. His expression changed as he listened to the caller, concern etching lines around his mouth. "It's okay, Mrs. Abernathy. No, don't try to drive in this. I'll come get Lily right away." He hung up, turning apologetic eyes to Eliza. "My babysitter needs to leave. Her own kids are home alone, and a tree branch fell on their roof. I need to pick up my daughter." "Of course," Eliza said, gathering her things. "I can call my team to come back." Actually, Jack hesitated, then continued with reluctance, "The roads to Denver are probably flooded by now. The storm's worse than predicted." He ran a hand through his hair, visibly weighing options. "Look, this is highly irregular, But my house isn't far. You'd be welcome to wait there while I finish the repairs. At least it's dry and has better coffee. The offer hung in the air between them, unexpected and strangely significant. In her world of calculated interactions and strategic relationships, spontaneous kindness from a stranger was rare enough to seem almost suspicious. Yet there was nothing but straightforward decency in Jack's eyes. "Are you sure?" Eliza asked. "I wouldn't want to impose. Lily would love the company," Jack said with a small smile. "And to be honest, it would be good for her to see that not all stranded travelers are grumpy." The decision felt weightier than it should have. "Thank you," Eliza said finally. "I'd appreciate that." Jack's truck was an older model Ford, meticulously maintained but with visible signs of age and use. Eliza settled into the passenger seat, noticing the booster seat in the back. A small purple jacket hung over the headrest, and a collection of smooth stones lined up on the dashboard. "Lily's treasures," Jack explained, following her gaze as he started the engine. "She collects one from every hiking trail we visit." They drove through the storm, windshield wipers fighting a losing battle against the downpour. Jack navigated the increasingly treacherous roads with careful attention, occasionally pointing out landmarks that were barely visible through the rain: the library where Lily attended story hour, the park where they flew kites in summer, the diner that made the best blueberry pancakes in Boulder. These small details of an ordinary life struck Eliza with unexpected force. When was the last time she had flown a kite? Had she ever really noticed the public library in any city she'd visited? Her life moved from boardroom to private jet to luxury hotel with seamless efficiency, but suddenly it seemed sterile compared to the rich texture of Jack's descriptions. They pulled into the driveway of a modest single-story home with a covered porch and cheerful yellow door. Before Jack could cut the engine, the door flew open and Lily bounded out. Wrapped in a raincoat, several sizes too large, her face alight with excitement. "Dad, Mrs. Abernathy let me use the weather station when the thunder started, and I recorded 7.3 seconds between lightning and thunder, which means it was 1.5 miles away," and she stopped abruptly, noticing Eliza for the first time. Her expression shifted from surprise to intense curiosity. "Lily, this is Liz," Jack said, helping Eliza navigate the puddles between the truck and porch. "Her plane had to make an emergency landing because of the storm. She's going to wait here while I finish repairing it." Lily's eyes widened. "Your plane broke? Was it scary? Did you think you were going to crash?" The questions tumbled out with the unfiltered directness of childhood. "Lily," Jack admonished gently, "it was a little scary," Eliza admitted, finding herself charmed by the girl's enthusiasm. "But your dad seems to know exactly how to fix it." Lily nodded solemnly. "Dad can fix anything. He fixed our neighbor's car last month and Mrs. Rodriguez made us tamales for a week." "Do you like tamales?" The simple question, asked with such earnest interest, made Eliza smile genuinely for what felt like the first time in months. "I do, very much." Inside, the foster home was modest in size, but rich in character. Bookshelves lined one wall, filled with an eclectic mix of aviation manuals, children's stories, and well-worn paperbacks. A handmade quilt draped over the back of a comfortable-looking sofa. Framed photographs documented Lily's growth, and here and there, Eliza glimpsed a beautiful woman with Lily's smile present in the earlier photos but absent from the more recent ones. "I need to get Lily settled with dinner, then head back to the airport for a few hours," Jack explained. "Make yourself comfortable. Mi casa es su casa, as they say." "Can Liz help me with my science project?" Lily asked, already tugging at Eliza's hand. "I'm making a weather tracker, and the barometric pressure part isn't working right." Jack gave Eliza an apologetic look, but she shook her head. "I'd be happy to help, if I can." "Perfect," Jack said, relief evident in his voice. "I'll get dinner started." The next hour passed in a blur of unexpected domesticity. Lily proudly showed Eliza her science project, a surprisingly sophisticated weather station made from household items and components ordered online. Eliza found herself explaining atmospheric pressure in terms an 8-year-old could understand. Genuinely impressed by the girl's grasp of scientific concepts. In the kitchen, Jack moved with the same quiet efficiency he'd shown at the airport, preparing a simple meal of pasta with homemade sauce. The familiar routine between father and daughter was evident in their seamless cooperation. Lily setting the table without being asked, Jack automatically cutting her garlic bread into smaller pieces. "Do you cook, Liz?" Lily asked as they sat down to eat. Elisa hesitated. The truth that her meals were primarily prepared by private chefs or ordered from exclusive restaurants seemed suddenly embarrassing. "Not often," she admitted. "And not very well. Dad says cooking is just chemistry you can eat," Lily informed her seriously. "Maybe he could teach you sometime." An awkward silence followed, broken by Jack offering more pasta. The simple meal was delicious, hearty, and comforting, in a way that five-star restaurants rarely achieved. Conversation flowed naturally, centered mostly around Lily's school adventures and Jack's latest restoration project, a 1947 Cessna. After dinner, Lily insisted that Eliza help with her bedtime routine. "You get the special plate," she declared, handing Eliza a ceramic dish painted with wildflowers. "It's for guests and birthdays." Later, as Eliza sat on the edge of Lily's bed, reading a chapter from a book about a young girl who discovered she could talk to machines, she felt Jack watching from the doorway. Their eyes met over Lily's head, and something unspoken passed between them, a moment of connection that transcended their brief acquaintance. "You'd make a good mommy," Lily murmured sleepily as Eliza finished the chapter. The innocent observation landed like a physical weight on Eliza's chest, stirring emotions she'd carefully compartmentalized for years. After Lily fell asleep, Jack offered Eliza a glass of wine. They sat in the living room, the storm still raging outside, creating a cocoon of intimacy around them. "Thank you for being so kind to Lily," Jack said, breaking the comfortable silence. "She doesn't get many visitors." "She's remarkable," Eliza replied honestly. "You're doing an amazing job with her." Jack's fingers absently touched his wedding ring. "Her mother would be proud of who she's becoming." He reached for a framed photo on the side table, passing it to Eliza. A beautiful woman with Lily's curls smiled back, her arm around a younger Jack, both radiating happiness. "Emma. She died 3 years ago. Cancer." The simple statement held volumes of unspoken grief. "I'm sorry," Eliza said, knowing the words were inadequate. Jack nodded, accepting her sympathy without dwelling on it. "What about you? Family waiting somewhere?" Eliza stared into her wine glass. There was someone once, but..." She paused, choosing her words carefully. "He was more interested in what I could do for him than who I was." The memory of finding her fiancé discussing their prenuptial agreement with his lawyer, specifically how to circumvent it, still stung, though she'd never admitted it to anyone. Jack didn't pry, respecting her reticence the way she'd respected his grief. Instead, he asked about books she enjoyed, places she'd visited, simple questions that required no deflection or carefully constructed answers. By the time he needed to return to the airport, Eliza felt more at ease than she had in years. "Lily will be fine sleeping. I won't be more than a couple of hours," Jack explained as he prepared to leave. "Make yourself at home seriously." Left alone in the quiet house, Eliza wandered slowly through the living room, studying the photographs and mementos that told the story of the Foster family. So different from her own sterile penthouse, with its curated art and designer furniture chosen by interior decorators. This home had been built piece by piece, memory by memory. On a shelf, she found a small wooden airplane, clearly handmade. Turning it over, she saw an inscription. "To Daddy, love Lily." Beside it stood a clay mug, misshapen but lovingly painted. These treasures, worthless in monetary terms but priceless in meaning, brought an unexpected lump to Eliza's throat. When Jack returned, he found Eliza asleep on the couch, an aviation history book open on her lap. For a moment, he simply stood in the doorway, struck by how right she looked there, as if she belonged in the modest living room with its second-hand furniture and handmade quilts. Then, gently, he placed a blanket over her and turned out the light. The next morning dawned clear, the storm having passed during the night. Sunlight streamed through the kitchen windows as Jack prepared breakfast, the routine slightly altered to accommodate their unexpected guest. Lily chattered excitedly, pleased to have company for her morning ritual of checking the weather measurements. "Can Liz come to the airport with us?" Lily asked, helping her father pack his tools. "I want to see the plane get fixed." Jack glanced at Eliza, who had borrowed one of his flannel shirts over her now dry but wrinkled blouse. "I think Liz probably wants to get back to her own life as soon as possible." But Eliza surprised herself by saying, "Actually, I'd love to see the repair process, if you don't mind having an audience." The drive to the airport felt different in the morning light, less like an emergency response and more like a shared adventure. Lily sat in the back, singing along to the radio and occasionally pointing out wildlife emerging after the storm. Jack drove with one hand on the wheel, the other resting on the open window, his profile relaxed in the golden light. At the airport, Lily immediately claimed a spot on an overturned bucket near the jet, her sketchbook open as she drew what she called Airplane Hospital. Jack began his work on the engine with methodical precision, explaining each step to both Lily and Eliza. "Hand me that wrench, would you?" he asked Eliza at one point, pointing to his toolbox. Eliza selected the tool, feeling oddly pleased when Jack nodded in approval. "Good eye. Most people can't tell a 3/8 from a 7/16 at a glance." As the morning progressed, Eliza found herself increasingly involved in the repair process, holding tools, learning the names of engine parts, even helping with minor tasks under Jack's patient guidance. His hands occasionally covered hers, adjusting her grip or showing her the right angle for a particular tool. Each brief contact sent an unexpected warmth through her. "You're a natural," Jack commented, as she successfully removed a damaged component. "Sure you haven't done this before?" Eliza laughed, wiping a smudge of grease from her cheek. "Definitely not. But I like understanding how things work." Their easy companionship was interrupted by Eliza's phone ringing. She glanced at the screen, her expression instantly shifting from relaxed to professional. "I need to take this," she said, stepping away from the jet. "Eliza Parker," she answered, her voice taking on the authoritative tone she used for business calls. Jack couldn't help overhearing fragments of her conversation, as she paced nearby phrases like board approval, the Singapore acquisition, and $50 million in funding drifting across the hangar. He straightened slowly, watching her with new understanding. This was no ordinary business traveler. The confident way she issued instructions, the deference evident even in the tinny voice responding from the phone, Eliza, or whatever her real name was, clearly wielded significant power. Before he could process this revelation, the sound of vehicles approaching drew his attention. 3 black SUVs pulled up outside the hangar, and several men in suits emerged, their bearing unmistakably that of security personnel. "Miss Parker," one of them said respectfully, as Eliza ended her call. "We've brought the parts needed for the repair, as you requested." Lily looked up from her drawing, eyes wide. "Miss Parker?" she echoed, looking between the suited men and Eliza. "Are you a princess or something? Is that why you have all these helpers?" Jack set down his tools, wiping his hands slowly on a shop rag. The easy connection he'd felt with Liz evaporated as he watched her transform before his eyes, spine straightening, chin lifting, the warmth in her expression replaced by polite detachment as she spoke with her staff. When she turned back to him, Jack was already packing up his tools, his movements deliberate and controlled. "So," he said quietly, "not just Liz, then." Eliza winced at his tone. "Jack. I can explain." "Miss Parker," he interrupted, emphasizing her formal name. "The parts your team brought will definitely speed up the repair process. I'll have your jet ready within the hour." "Dad." Lily's voice held confusion as she sensed the sudden tension. Jack forced a smile for his daughter's benefit. "Lilypad, it looks like Miss Parker is a very important person, and her plane needs to be fixed right away so she can get back to her important meetings." Eliza flinched at the undercurrent of hurt in his words. "Jack, please. Last night wasn't what?" he asked when she didn't continue. "Wasn't you pretending to be someone you're not? Slumming it with the local mechanic and his kid for your own amusement?" "That's not fair," Eliza said, her voice low to avoid Lily overhearing. "I never pretended to be anyone. I just didn't tell you everything. You could have hired any mechanic in the country with a snap of your fingers. Why let me work for free when you clearly have money to burn?" Jack's voice remained calm, but his eyes betrayed his hurt. Was this some kind of social experiment? "See how the other half lives." Eliza took a step toward him, then stopped as she noticed Lily watching them intently. "It wasn't like that. For once, someone saw me, just me, not what I could do for them." Jack laughed without humor. "Right, because billionaires are the real victims here." He turned away, focusing on the jet engine with renewed intensity. "I'll finish the repair. Then you can get back to your real life." Eliza stood frozen, caught between the world she'd briefly visited and the one she was obligated to return to. One of her security team approached respectfully. "Miss Parker, we've arranged for your meeting with the investors to be conducted via video conference in 1 hour. The equipment is being set up in the airport office." "Thank you, Richard," she responded automatically, her eyes still on Jack's rigid back. Lily appeared at Eliza's side, tugging gently on her borrowed shirt. "Are you really leaving? You didn't see my whole science project work yet." Eliza knelt to Lily's level, her heart aching at the disappointment in the child's eyes. "I have to go, sweetheart. But your project is going to be amazing. Will you come back and visit us?" Lily asked, hope brightening her face. Before Eliza could answer, Jack called from the jet. "Lily, I need your help over here, please." The dismissal was clear. With a last apologetic look at Lily, Eliza allowed herself to be escorted to the airport office. Slipping back into the role of Eliza Parker, CEO and technological innovator, while a hollow feeling expanded in her chest. 2 hours later, the repairs were complete. Jack watched from the hangar doorway as Eliza emerged from her video conference, once again the polished executive in control of her environment. She hesitated when she saw him, then walked over, stopping a few feet away. "The jet is ready," he said formally. "My invoice for parts and labor has been given to your staff." Eliza nodded, noting that he'd charged only for the parts and a fraction of the labor hours he'd put in. "Jack, I want to explain." "There's nothing to explain," he interrupted, his voice softening slightly. "I've been on the other side of charity from rich people before. My ex-wife left me for a hedge fund manager, who thought throwing money at problems made them disappear. I don't need your explanations or your guilt money." Eliza's eyes widened at this revelation, suddenly understanding his reaction better. "That's not what this was," she insisted. "I've been having health issues recently, nothing life-threatening," she added quickly, seeing his expression change. "But it made me reprioritize what matters. For once, I wanted to be seen as a person, not a portfolio." "Is that supposed to make me feel better about being lied to?" Jack asked. "I never lied," Eliza countered. "I just enjoyed being normal for a little while." Jack's laugh held no humor. "Normal people don't get to try on other lives like designer clothes. Miss Parker, we're stuck in our reality. And you think I'm not?" For the first time, genuine anger flashed in Eliza's eyes. "You think being wealthy means freedom? I haven't gone anywhere without security in 5 years. Every relationship I've had since founding my company has ended when I discovered they wanted my connections, my money, or my influence. I can count on one hand the number of people who know the real me. And what was I? An anthropological study of how the working class lives." Jack's voice remained low, but the hurt was evident. "No," Eliza said softly. "You were the first person in years who looked at me and just saw me." The tension between them was interrupted by a staff member approaching to inform Eliza that the jet was fueled and ready for departure. She reached into her pocket and pulled out a business card, holding it out to Jack. "If you ever—" "The job's done," Jack said, not taking the card. "Safe travels, Miss Parker." He turned away, calling for Lily, who was saying goodbye to the pilot. Eliza stood for a moment, the business card still in her outstretched hand, before slowly returning it to her pocket. As she boarded the jet, she looked back through the window, catching a final glimpse of Jack and Lily standing together on the tarmac, his hand protectively on his daughter's shoulder. Something twisted painfully in her chest as the door closed, sealing her back into her privileged, isolated world. 2 weeks passed. Jack threw himself into his work at the airport, staying later than usual and taking on additional restoration projects. Colleagues noticed his subdued mood, the absence of his rare but genuine smile, but knew better than to pry. At home, he maintained the routines that anchored Lily's life: bedtime stories, weekend hikes, science project assistance, but something was missing, a warmth that had briefly flared and been extinguished. Lily occasionally asked about Liz, her 8-year-old perception having picked up on the connection between her father and their visitor. Jack answered honestly but simply. "Sometimes people just pass through our lives, Lily, Pad. It doesn't mean they weren't important for the time they were here." On a Wednesday afternoon, Jack received a call from Lily's school. The principal's voice was apologetic, but firm. "Mr. Foster, we've just learned the district has cut our funding. The science program will be significantly reduced next year." That evening, Jack attended an emergency PTA meeting, sitting in the back of the school gymnasium among concerned parents. The situation was dire. The school needed $50,000 to maintain their science equipment and teacher. Various fundraising ideas were suggested, but the gap seemed insurmountable for the modest community. "I can volunteer additional hours," Jack offered when his turn came to speak. "I'm not a certified teacher, but I could run workshops on basic engineering principles. Maybe help maintain the existing equipment." The science teacher, Miss Rodriguez, smiled gratefully at his offer, but the financial reality remained stark. As the meeting disbanded, Jack stayed behind, helping stack chairs while discussing possible solutions with the teacher. "The children will be heartbroken," Miss Rodriguez sighed, gesturing to the classroom visible through the gymnasium doors. "Especially Lily. She's been thriving in our STEM program." Jack nodded, his chest tight with the familiar feeling of being unable to fix something important. "We'll figure something out," he promised, though the words felt hollow. The next morning, Jack dropped Lily at school as usual. As he turned to leave, he noticed something unusual: several large delivery trucks parked near the service entrance. Curious, he watched as workers began unloading crates, labeled with scientific equipment names. The principal hurried across the playground, her face flushed with excitement. "Mr. Foster, you won't believe what's happened. An anonymous donor has provided complete funding for a state-of-the-art STEM lab. Everything we needed and more." Jack's pulse quickened. Anonymous? The donation came through an educational foundation. The only note said, "For future innovators." The principal beamed. "It's a miracle," Really? Over $200,000 in equipment and a 5-year funding commitment for the program. Jack helped unload some of the heavier equipment, his mind racing. The coincidence seemed too perfect, the timing too convenient. After the last crate was delivered, he asked to see the security camera footage from the administrative office, citing his role on the school safety committee. There, in grainy black and white, he saw what he'd half expected. Eliza Parker, dressed simply in jeans and a sweater, being given a tour of the school after hours by the night janitor. She moved with purpose, taking notes as she examined the science room, pausing to study the project display where Lily's weather station held a prominent position. Jack sat back in the office chair, conflicting emotions washing over him. The gesture was undeniably generous, potentially life-changing for dozens of children including his daughter. Yet the unilateral nature of it, the way Eliza had once again acted from her position of wealth and power without consultation, left him unsettled. That evening, as he tucked Lily into bed, she bubbled with excitement about the new equipment that had arrived. "Miss Rodriguez says we're getting a real weather monitoring station, Dad. And microscopes that connect to computers." Jack smiled at her enthusiasm. "That's wonderful, sweetheart. Do you think Liz would like to see it?" Lily asked suddenly. She helped me understand barometric pressure. The innocent question caught Jack off guard. "I'm not sure we'll see Liz again, Lily." "Why not?" "She was nice. And she looked at you the way Miss Rodriguez looks at Mr. Brennan when she thinks nobody's watching." Jack chuckled, despite himself, smoothing Lily's wild curls. "Is that so? And how is that, exactly?" "Like you're her favorite person," Lily yawned, snuggling deeper under her covers. "Even when you don't know it." The observation lingered in Jack's mind, long after Lily had fallen asleep. He sat on the porch swing, watching stars emerge in the clear mountain sky, turning a smooth stone from Lily's collection over in his hands. 3 days later, Jack received a call just as he was preparing to close the airport for the night. A pilot needed emergency assistance with a vintage Beechcraft Staggerwing, experiencing engine trouble. The location was a small private airstrip in the mountains, about 40 minutes from Boulder. "I wouldn't ask if it wasn't urgent," the caller explained. "The owner's particularly attached to this aircraft." Jack hesitated, thinking of Lily at her friend's house for a sleepover. "Text me the coordinates. I'll be there as soon as I can." The drive took him through winding mountain roads, the spring evening still bright enough to illuminate the spectacular scenery. Jack found the airstrip easily enough, a well-maintained but seldom used facility tucked between pine-covered slopes. As he pulled up, he immediately noticed 2 aircraft on the tarmac. The vintage Beechcraft mentioned by the caller, and a familiar Gulfstream jet. His hands tightened on the steering wheel. Taking a deep breath, he parked and grabbed his toolkit, approaching the Beechcraft where a pilot stood waiting. "Thanks for coming on short notice," the pilot said, extending his hand. "The owner's over by the hangar." Jack turned slowly, not surprised to see Eliza walking toward him. She had abandoned her executive attire for jeans and a simple blouse, her hair pulled back in a casual ponytail. Without makeup or designer clothes, she looked younger, more approachable, more like the Liz who had spent an evening in his home. "There was never anything wrong with this plane, was there?" Jack asked, without preamble. Eliza shook her head. "I needed to see you. To explain properly, without an audience. The school donation. That was you." It wasn't a question, but Eliza nodded anyway. "Not for you," she clarified quickly. "For the children who deserve opportunities." Jack studied her face, looking for signs of condescension or pity, but found only sincerity. "Why the secrecy? Why not just contact me directly? Would you have accepted my call?" Eliza countered softly. The truth of her assessment hung between them. After a moment, Jack set down his toolkit. "I'm listening." Eliza gestured toward a small seating area near the hangar. Once they were seated, she spoke with uncharacteristic hesitation. "I've never really apologized to anyone before. Not sincerely. In my world, problems get solved with money or power, not genuine remorse." She met his eyes directly. "I'm sorry for not being completely honest with you." Jack's expression remained neutral. "Why the school? More charity to make yourself feel better?" "No." Eliza shook her head emphatically. After I left, I wanted to understand more about Lily's life. I visited the school, talked to some teachers. When I saw the need, it wasn't about you or me, it was about children with potential not having the tools they need." Her voice softened. "I grew up brilliant but poor, Jack. A scholarship changed my life. I wanted to pay that forward." As if on cue, thunder rumbled in the distance. Both looked up to see storm clouds gathering over the mountains, an echo of their first meeting. "We should get inside," Jack said, noting the darkening sky. Looks like another system moving in. They took shelter in the small airport building as rain began to fall, the parallel to their first encounter not lost on either of them. This time, however, there was no pretense between them, just two people trying to bridge a gap created by circumstance and misunderstanding. I wasn't completely honest with you either, Jack admitted after a moment of silence. I told you my wife died, which is true. But before that, she left me for someone else, someone wealthy, who could give her the life she felt she deserved. Eliza's expression softened with understanding. That's why you reacted so strongly when you found out who I was. Jack nodded. Emma came back when she got sick. I couldn't turn her away, not when she needed someone. We reconciled before the end, for Lily's sake if nothing else. But that experience taught me that worlds don't mix, not really. He looked at her directly. Your world and mine are too different. Are they? Eliza challenged gently. We both love aviation. We both value honesty and hard work. We both know what it means to protect ourselves from being hurt. Outside, the storm intensified, rain lashing against the windows. Inside, something shifted in the atmosphere between them. When I was diagnosed with a benign tumor last year, Eliza continued, her voice barely audible above the rain, not a single person in my inner circle asked how I felt. They asked about succession plans, about stock implications, about the company's future. I have everything and no one to share it with. The vulnerability in her admission struck Jack deeply. Without thinking, he reached across the space between them, his calloused hand covering her smaller one. I'm glad you're okay, he said simply. They talked through the evening as the storm raged outside, sharing truths they had previously guarded. Jack described the struggle of rebuilding his life after Emma's death, of learning to be both mother and father to Lily. Eliza spoke of the loneliness of success, of building an empire that demanded everything and returned only material wealth. When the rain finally subsided, leaving behind the fresh scent of wet earth and pine, they emerged to find a world washed clean by the storm. The setting sun broke through the clouds, casting golden light across the mountains. I have a proposition for you, Eliza said as they stood side by side, watching the spectacle. A professional one, she clarified quickly. Jack raised an eyebrow, waiting. I'm starting an aviation training program for underprivileged youth, teaching mechanical skills, flight theory, maybe even pilot training for those who qualify. Her eyes were alight with genuine enthusiasm. I need someone who knows the technical aspects inside and out, someone who can develop a curriculum that's practical, not just theoretical. And you want me to find this person for you? Jack asked, though he already knew the answer. Eliza smiled. I want you to be this person. Not out of charity, Jack. I need your expertise. These kids need someone real, someone who's actually done the work. Jack considered the offer, intrigued despite his reservations. I'd need to maintain my regular job. Lily and I have a life here. Of course, Eliza nodded. It would be consulting work initially. You could set your own hours, your own terms. I'll think about it, Jack said, not committing but not refusing either. A week later, Jack agreed to visit the proposed site for the program. He brought Lily along, curious to see how Eliza would interact with his daughter without the pressure of their first meeting. They arranged to meet on a Saturday morning at the property Eliza had purchased, a decommissioned municipal airport about 30 minutes from Boulder. To Jack's surprise, Eliza arrived alone, driving herself in a modest SUV rather than being chauffeured in a luxury vehicle. She wore practical clothes suited for touring an outdoor facility, and her hair was pulled back in a simple ponytail. Most striking, however, was the picnic basket she carried, clearly prepared by her own hands, with slightly lopsided sandwiches and cookies that were definitely not made by a professional chef. I thought we could have lunch after the tour, she explained, somewhat self-consciously. I'm not much of a cook, but I can manage sandwiches. Lily immediately gravitated toward Eliza, eager to share her ideas for kid-friendly tools and a weather station for the training facility. Jack watched their interaction with newfound perspective, noting how Eliza listened to his daughter with genuine interest, treating her ideas with the same respect she might give to a business associate. The property itself had tremendous potential, several hangars in good condition, a solid runway, and spectacular mountain views. As they walked the grounds, Jack found himself mentally redesigning spaces, envisioning classrooms and workshop areas where young people could learn the skills that had given him purpose throughout his life. What do you think? Eliza asked as they settled on a blanket for their picnic lunch. Lily having run ahead to explore a decommissioned control tower, under the watchful eye of a security officer. It has good bones, Jack admitted. The infrastructure is solid. With the right program design, it could be something special. Eliza smiled, pleased by his assessment. And would you consider being part of that design process? Jack watched Lily in the distance, her wild curls catching the sunlight as she pretended to direct imaginary planes. "I would," he said finally. "As a consultant, to start. I need to be sure it's a good fit before making any bigger commitments." "That's fair," Eliza nodded. "I wouldn't expect anything else." As they ate the imperfect but earnest lunch Eliza had prepared, Lily rejoined them, flopping dramatically onto the blanket. "Can we come here again sometime?" she asked, looking between the adults. "Maybe Liz could come to our house again too?" The innocent question hung in the air, charged with implication. Jack met Eliza's eyes over his daughter's head, seeing both hope and uncertainty there. "We'll see, Lilypad," he said softly. One step at a time. Over the following weeks, a tentative partnership formed. Jack consulted on the program development, meeting with Eliza weekly to design training modules and equipment specifications. They maintained professional boundaries, focusing on the project rather than the undercurrent of attraction that neither could fully deny. Gradually, trust rebuilt between them. Jack began sharing stories about Emma, not just the illness at the end, but the good years before, the love they had shared, the foundation they had created for Lily. Eliza, in turn, allowed him glimpses of her life beyond the corporate facade, her passion for environmental innovation, her dreams for technology that could make clean energy accessible to everyone, her childhood struggles in a family that valued achievement above emotion. Lily formed her own bond with Eliza, seeking her help with science projects and sharing books they both enjoyed. A natural rhythm developed between the three of them, not quite a family, but something with its own unique harmony. One evening, Jack stayed late at the training facility, working on adapting an engine for instructional purposes. When he entered the main hangar, he found Eliza already there, sleeves rolled up, hands greasy as she methodically disassembled a carburetor. "You could hire anyone to do this," he observed, leaning against the workbench. "Why learn yourself?" Eliza looked up, a smudge of grease on her cheek. "Because you taught me that things worth doing take your own hands." She held up a component. "Besides, how can I understand what these kids will be learning if I don't experience it myself?" Jack moved closer, gently adjusting her grip on the wrench she was using. "Like this," he demonstrated, his hand covering hers. "You'll get better leverage." Their eyes met, and neither moved away. The moment stretched between them, filled with possibility. The following week, Eliza received an offer to sell her company and relocate its headquarters overseas. The opportunity was tremendous: expanded market reach, favorable tax considerations, proximity to emerging markets. Her board of directors strongly favored the move. Standing at the window of her penthouse office in Denver, Eliza watched a storm gathering over the distant mountains, the direction of Boulder, of the training facility, of Jack and Lily. The decision before her represented a crossroads not just professionally but personally. When her assistant entered with the final paperwork for the relocation, Eliza made her choice. "We're staying in Colorado," she said firmly. "In fact, we're moving our headquarters to Boulder." "But the overseas opportunity," her assistant began. "Is just that, an opportunity. Not the opportunity." Eliza turned from the window, newfound certainty in her voice. "Boulder has everything we need for the next phase of growth. Plus," she added with a small smile, "the view is better." 6 months later, the aviation training program welcomed its first class of students, 15 teenagers from underserved communities across Colorado. Jack had accepted a formal position as technical director, balancing his new responsibilities with his continuing work at the municipal airport. Eliza had relocated both her personal residence and company headquarters to Boulder, deliberately choosing a modest home rather than an ostentatious mansion. On the opening day of the program, the original Gulfstream jet that had brought them together was unveiled as a permanent fixture at the training facility, a sophisticated teaching tool that would help generations of young mechanics learn their craft. As students explored the aircraft, Jack and Eliza stood side by side near the engine compartment where they had first connected. "Do you ever miss your old life?" Jack asked quietly. "The penthouse, the private jets at your disposal, the corporate power lunches?" Eliza considered the question seriously. "I still have access to all those things. I've just chosen to use them differently." She looked around at the eager students. "This feels more meaningful than another acquisition or merger." Jack nodded, understanding. Then, with deliberate movements, he removed his wedding ring for the first time in years. He studied it for a moment before placing it carefully in a small box in his tool chest. "Emma would have liked you," he said simply. Eliza's eyes widened at the significance of the gesture. "Is that so?" She valued authenticity above everything else. "It's what attracted me to her in the first place." Jack's gaze held Eliza's steadily. "It's what attracts me to you, too." 1 year after their first meeting, Jack and Eliza stood together on the airfield at sunset, watching Lily test a small engine she had built herself. The little motor sputtered and coughed, then roared to life as Lily jumped up and down with excitement. "She's going to change the world someday," Jack said proudly. "She already has," Eliza replied softly. "She brought us together." Jack took Eliza's hand, their fingers intertwining naturally. "Thank you for fixing me," she whispered. Jack smiled, squeezing her hand gently. "We fixed each other. That's how it works with the right parts." As the sun dipped below the mountains, Lily's engine hummed steadily in the background, a sound of promise, of things working as they should, of broken pieces made whole again. True love isn't found in bank accounts or social status, it's discovered in the courage to be vulnerable again after life's storms have passed. If this story reminded you that kindness and genuine connection still exist in our world, share it with someone who needs to believe in second chances. Sometimes the most beautiful journeys begin with unexpected turbulence.